tomorrow, and yeah, they're gonna be picked up and driven to Paris. So yeah, big move day, and you know how moves are; they're always a mystery. And speaking about mystery, we've got
Yeah.
a very nice guest here with us.
Yeah. Today we have we're joined by Daniel Petrosini. Do I have that right?
Petrosini.
Petrosini.
Yes.
Yeah. Dan's a prolific best-selling author with more than 25 books in English and translated to Spanish, whose thrillers often start from a question of what if. And yeah, we're really excited to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Adam, and stay. I'm excited. I'm excited to that you're embarking on this very interesting project called Hardcover, and my sympathies go to Stay for moving because that's that's a heavy lift today.
Yeah, it's
Good
been
luck
all
with
right.
that.
Yeah.
But I
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity to speak to the both of you and to tell you a little bit about myself and to learn about whatever it is that you're doing, and the opportunity to engage with your readers and your subscribers.
Yeah, we every month we send out like a email to our subscribers where we say like, here are the books that are the most read on hardcover and the books that are the most like look forward to that are coming out
Mm.
in the following month. And so far, hardcover readers have focused on a couple genres specifically, but yeah, fantasy, science fiction, and thrillers are probably and romance would probably like the top four that are always kind of up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the last several years, I mean, we used to, people in the mystery business, I write crime fiction, murder mysteries, a thing of that nature. And we've kind of shifted to this thriller. I don't know if it's kind of like a cultural thing a little bit with the twists that are necessary and also possibly a little shorter attention spans where things have to move quicker, a lot of less backstory. So now I'm a quote unquote a thriller writer. Um, I don't know how much has changed, but you hit the main genres. That's where everyone's reading. I mean, so
Cool. Yeah, and I think when I opened up LinkedIn, it said like writer, like your job title was like writer, 37 years. So I have a feeling things have changed a lot over the course of that time in
oh
the
yeah,
writing
the whole
industry.
the well, I mean, it's a journey, right? This is kind of a craft. I don't want to be too hoity-toity about it, but it is a craft, and you learn how to communicate with readers. You learn how to tell a story, and I wrote my first story when I was 10, so that's a long time ago. Um, Obviously, it was from Mom. It was about Martians, but that was one of my. I only had one other foray into science fiction from there, but there's no question about that. A writer changes quite a bit along this journey, um, and you learn the craft. You get kicked around a little bit, right, from from reviews and from editors, and you just polish. You continue to polish. Perfection is never really achieved in any art, if you will, but it's that journey, and I enjoy that journey. I enjoy the whole process. I'm not saying it's not frustrating. It certainly is frustrating at times, but I've learned how to write a book in a certain time period, with a deadline, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, one of the things that I don't know, this is more craft oriented. I'm not sure you want to go in this direction, but
Oh
Okay.
if
no,
you were
go
to
for
talk
it.
about, one of the things that people, writers or aspiring writers and readers always worry about, inspiration and the muse, right? The muse, as if the words come out of you. It comes from some soft, somewhere, um, in the ether, that boom. No, it does not happen that way. It just doesn't. You have to. One of the things that I've learned that has been, for whatever success I've achieved, is discipline, right? So generally, you're not. It's just not easy to write. You picture a scene in your head, maybe, and now you got to get it on paper. And where's it going to go? Um, so you sit down and you try to realize that I don't know what to say. and this happens every day, So rather than taking the convenient excuse called writer's block, we're sure we've all heard that. In my opinion, and the opinion of other folks like Stephen King, for instance, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as writer's block. You have to sit down and you have to force the words out. Stephen Pressfield, who is a famous writer of both fiction and nonfiction, he wrote his best known for probably The Legend of Bagger Vance, which is that golf movie, if you remember. He wrote that book, and he wrote a book about writing, and it was called The War of Art, which is a play on the art of war. And the war of art, he calls it the resistance is the enemy. It's the resistance that you feel when, I'm not good enough. This stinks what I'm writing right now. So you have to overcome that. And one final comment on this forcing it out was that what was a kind of a breakthrough for me, and I urge others to deploy this tactic, is to force it out. And then when you go back and read it, you would think that it's kind of crummy, right? It's not as good as the part that you wrote yesterday that kind of flowed a bit. The fact of the matter is, for me anyway, when I go back and read what I've written, I do it about every 10,000 words. I go back to the beginning, clean it up, and keep the storyline going. I found out that it was not discernible what was quote unquote forced versus what was flowed. So that revelation was like, oh my God, okay. So even though it's not artistic, to word by word, it works. It works. So go for it, folks, if you're considering it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very good to hear. You were saying that you write every day, so like every single day you go through all of that. Does
Yes.
it ever not what are some of the rituals or things that you do when it just doesn't happen, or does it happen all the time if you sit
Oh,
just force it
well,
out?
yeah, no, that's a great question as well. So yes, I write every day. I have a goal every day to write X number of words, and it's the same number. I shoot for 1,000 words a day. Many times I don't get it, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Right now I'm in a project now I'm struggling on, so I'm writing about 500 to 600 a day, because it's a departure from what I normally write in a certain way. So it's different. It's a different. And there are other days that I write 2,000, 2,500. It's you're in a groove. You see the scene. You know the scene. You know where the story's going. It's a little easier to write, especially when you're writing in a series and you know your character. Then it becomes much easier to write. If you're writing murder mysteries, you're writing the 7th murder mystery. You're going to need X amount of suspects, a carousel of suspects, and I'm not saying it's formulaic, but there are certain cliches in a genre that a genre reader, somebody picks up a romance book, they're obviously there's a relationship they know is going to be in there, and there are certain things that are going to have to happen inside that book. So every day, I wherever I wrote yesterday, I know where I'm at, and I know where the story is supposed to go forward. Many times, if I don't know where it's going to go, I'm like, should I go left? Should I go right? What should I do? Because, and I could talk about discovery writing. I go, let me stop here and write another scene that needs to happen maybe 3 days later in the story. So that scene has to get written anyway. So let me go there, write that scene, and then come back. And I believe entirely about the subconscious process that when you're thinking about the story during the day, when I'm not writing or when I'm in the evening, whatever, that story's in my head. And subconsciously, it's being worked on, And sometimes, again, it's not magic, and it's not, I, I don't want to make it seem like it's I'm searching for the right word, but kind of like sci-fi, that it's going to pop into your head, that type of thing. Why do they say to us to sleep on something, right? You sleep on a major decision because subconsciously, it's rattling around in your head, and then you go, yeah, I got to go left today. I can't. Going right's not going to work. And that happens in storytelling as well. I just want to back up a second and talk about how I write anyway. There are two main ways to write. One is called an outliner, right? So they have a story idea and then they write an outline. So whether how detailed it is, some folks, and I've taken some master classes where like with the famous writers, where they have these very detailed outlines, 30 and 40 pages of a story. I mean, that was very difficult for me. I couldn't do it. It just took the fun out of it, frankly, for me. So you can either, again, write an outline and then write the book from the outline, where everything's kind of predetermined. You know who the bad guy is, who's going to get hurt, those types of things. Or you could do what we call is a pantster, which is by the seat of your pants. I kind of call myself a discovery writer, which is I have an idea for a story, and then I'll write maybe 8 or 10 bullet points or 2 sentences about each of those major, let's say the inciting incident, right? And I write those types of things down. Then I set out to do it. It's much like driving at night, where you get behind the wheel of your car, you put your lights on, and you could see about maybe, I don't know what it is, a quarter of a mile ahead, something like that, but you can't see any further. And that's the same method that I use. So I know where I'm going in the next day or two in the story, but I really don't know what's going to happen a month into that story. And that gives me the flexibility to change direction. And it's much more fun for me. Yeah, certainly you paint yourself into corners. you definitely so. And you may have major plot problems. But now, after so many years of doing this, my work now is pretty clean when I'm done with that first draft. I usually don't get myself into a room that I can't get out of. And when I do get in that room that I can't get out of, as I related earlier, I'll then write another part of the story that needs to get written anyway. And then I will work on it subconsciously. I actively don't try to find the problem. If I need to get, simplistically speaking, let's say I need to get 2 characters that never met each other together to accomplish, I need them to be together. And they don't know each other. So yeah, outside of a funeral, let's say, rather than trying to think in my brain, well, maybe they're going to go get an ice cream together and bang into each other, things like nature. I push all of that in my head. Every time an idea comes in, I push it out. I actively push it out and try to generate because I don't want to settle on something that's easy and convenient. I try to let everything just simmer in my brain, and then hopefully I'll go, okay, I like that, and how about if I take that and I, make it red, and that's how it works for me, and it keeps me interested. At the end of the day, for a writer, you have to entertain yourself. At the end of the day, I mean, so that's how I approach it. That's how I've been doing it. So
it's interesting hearing that, because so many of the things you described, I have a feeling like others in different creative spaces besides just authors probably feel the same about like their work. Like as you were describing all that, I'm like, that sounds pretty similar to how I approach a programming problem. I'll be thinking about it at night as I'm falling asleep. If I'm stuck, I'll go do something similar, maybe another feature that's tangentially related. And I have a feeling I saw Stay nodding, so he's probably thinking the same thing about design problems that he's encountering as well.
100%. Yeah, this was fascinating, to see, because we can get insights for like this spans like the whole like spectrum of people trying to solve problems, and yeah, it's been amazing to like
I think that
how you
yeah, all creatives, and people always say that oh, I'm not creative, I don't know this. I said, well, like, do you cook? You cook? Okay, you cook. I don't cook. But if you cook, you're creating something, right? And to your point, Adam, about what should I do? How do these chefs, create these recipes? So some subconsciously in their head, they're going, oh, whatever it is, they didn't like that dish. They can't figure out what would make it better. And then, 2:00 in the morning, they wake up and they're going to the boys' room and they go like, wow, what if I add cinnamon to that dish? And that's how it really works. Kind of a weird thing. And a lot. There's a lot of information because I'm a focused guy and I'm very disciplined. But and most of the writers, the advice given to writers when they write is to shut off their internet service. Okay,
Mm.
so don't check your emails, don't check your Facebook, forget about social media, don't do any of that. And I do advocate for being focused on what you do. I'm a little weird that when I get to these points where I don't know what to do next in a story and I'm writing it and I take a break, I get to the next, I write 4 or 5 paragraphs and I'm going, okay, I take a breather and I'm trying to think and nothing's hit me. Then I'll pop on, I'll look at a news site, I'll come back and just trying to buy time instead of looking at the words. I'm looking at something different. It's weird. I'll give you that, but it does work for me, you know. So
It's, yeah. And yeah, out of curiosity, like I know you kind of gravitated towards mystery and then thrillers, whodunit. What kind of drew you to that niche in the first place?
so it's kind of interesting. When I first started to write, I did what's called genre hopping. So I wrote what I wanted to write, So just for argument's sake, I write a coming of age story. I wrote a spy book, a political thriller, science fiction, and the people I was working with would always say to me, Dan, you better focus because somebody who reads, just for argument's sake, science fiction is not going to read a political thriller. They're different readers altogether. So if you want to gain any readership, you should stay in a lane, right? Stay in one lane, which kind of makes sense. Um, there are a few people who do this very successfully, and what they generally do is they have pen names, right? So they have a pen name, Bob Smith for their sci-fi and Harry James for their romance novels. Um, Especially important when you're doing things like children's books and things that are racy material. So I'm always fascinated. I was always fascinated with crime, right? What makes people do the things that they do? Why? Why do you look how popular true crime is today, right? I'm a
Oh
true
yeah.
crime junkie. I am, admittedly. I mean, I love watching these things, and I say this constantly to my wife when we watch things. I'm going, if I would have wrote a book like this, no one would believe it that this actually happened. Truth is stranger than fiction, and it is true. It really is. If I write a book, it has to be believable. Some of the things that actually happen are unbelievable. Just go like, can't be. How did this happen? So I was always fascinated with crime, true crime, or people's motivations, the mistakes that they make. And recently, I have a new series that I started exploring revenge, right? Thinking about how people get themselves consumed with revenge. And it's not your typical eye for an eye type of thing. Um, that's been done, the vigilanteism. This is not that. This is totally different. But a creative way, using creativity to get revenge. So it's definitely a different twist. But I was always, again, fascinated with people that held grudges, you know, hold these, and they're really hurting themselves, right? I mean, who are you hurting? It's like, you know, you're drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die, right? I mean, that's basically what that is. There's a famous saying along those lines about revenge. So observing, watching TV, reading, true crime always fascinated me, and of course, as a young kid, Agatha Christie was the queen of the murder mysteries, right? I mean, and she found a way to have. I still remember 10 Little Indians, right? You know, they have 10 people locked in a room. How did this? Who did it? That type of situation. So I thought she was very effective, and I thought that this is something I wanted to do. And I think I achieved a fair amount of that with the murder mystery stuff. So I have a long series, 15 books long in the murder mystery that I've done. That's my claim to fame at this point. Um, uh, you know, Working in that genre and having a lot of fun with that thing. Of course, it's a little more difficult today with forensics and cameras and coming up with viable ways that somebody does not get caught. So that's that's challenging. It's definitely got a lot more difficult. So that's what kind of drew me in was watching shows or reading books where you thought you knew who the killer is as you read, and then you go, "Oh my God, I didn't see that coming," and that type of thing. And can I do that? I want to be able to do that. That was my goal as a kid, was being able to have like, "Oh my God," that type of that kind of reaction from somebody that I didn't see it coming. Man, that was unbelievable. You know, so that's what impressed me, and I wanted to take a crack at doing it.
Very cool.
That's yeah, very nice. And going like from the genres to the broader like way you publish. How did you happen to choose self-publishing? Because
Well,
yeah,
yeah, okay,
what
yeah.
drew you to that decision?
Well, it was a pretty easy decision actually, because traditional. Well, so let's make the parallel between the publishing industry and the music industry, right? There was this
Mm,
whole,
yeah.
you know, upheaval. Make a long story short, they called it the democratization of being able to get out there with that you're unknown. Like any band today can put a CD out. That doesn't make it make any money on it, right? I mean, But the same things that happened in the music business, i.e., the who made the money, not the bands, not the singers, especially in the 50s and 60s and all those horror stories that we've heard about. The same thing happens in the publishing business. So the traditional publishers who are really shrinking right now, there's really only like four of them now. They they mistreated people like me, in my opinion. So if you're not Stephen King or James Patterson or somebody like that, you get no attention, and they take all the money, and you still end up having to do the marketing. So after let's call it distasteful experience that I had early on, at that time, there was self-publishing was already around, but it was called basically vanity. It was vanity publishing at the end of the day. So you would have to pay a publisher to get your book out there, which is really kind of ridiculous. So, but when Amazon came out with the ebook situation, that they started doing, it opened up a whole area, and many of the people that I knew were starting to go in that way, and it seemed pretty easy to do. So I jumped in the water as well. And the thing that's good about it is you could do one book traditional, one book, quote unquote self-publishing. I shy away from using the word self-publishing. I consider myself an independently published person now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm independently published. I have my own my own team, if you will, my own editors, my own cover designers, my own. I have an assistant that works for me. My own people who do the marketing. So I have my own network, a team of people that help me do what I need to do. I mean, because I want to concentrate on working on writing. I don't want to concentrate on formatting a book to get it, distributed and all of that. You still have to have your hand in it, otherwise you're going to get taken advantage of. But I think most of the serious, quote unquote, self-published authors have adopted the same model. We have our own editors, our own folks that we go to that help us get our product to the market. And there's some guys that have taken it now even a step further, selling directly on their website. I haven't done that yet. I'm thinking about it, selling directly. And now, because now we have companies that have risen up that offer those types of services. So you could, quote unquote, circumvent Amazon. You want to buy my ebook that's on your Kindle? Because things have evolved. When Amazon first got into business, they had their own format, Kindle format, that you couldn't read on another reader. Now everything's standardized. So if you want to, you could use these other entities who act as a middleman, and then they take care of the taxes, et cetera, distribution. So it's a much better deal. I'm able to control my product. I could price my product where I could price it. I could do exactly what I want to do. I can market it in any way I'd like. And the other important factor for an impatient person like me, don't forget I was born in New York City, so I don't have patience is not one of my virtues. The time horizon for getting a book in the traditional sense is minimum a year and a half, 18 months to 2 years to get a book in out. And so whereas we write that book, we can have it start to finish in 6 months, if you can get the words down, get it edited, proofread, the whole 9 yards. So, you're running your own little business. There are things that you have to deal with that you don't want to deal with, but it's better to me than to do it this way. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm a type.
having that team to support you on all
Yeah.
the other parts sounds amazing. Is is there a part of the publishing process that is most difficult for you or most like painful for you today?
It's probably marketing. It's probably
Here we go.
marketing. Yeah, that's the most difficult part because creating ads, it's not easy. It's not something I'm personally good at. You know, do I have the talent to create a scroll stopping image? Now you have to learn AI. Most of these images now are being assisted by AI or completely created by AI. And learning all of these things, it's a major undertaking, and that takes time away from writing. It takes time away from the things that I'd like to do, the things that I want to put my time into doing. So marketing is definitely a challenge. I don't know of any author that doesn't say the same thing. It's really it's difficult. It's difficult, and it's expensive. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
how do you? Oh, go ahead, say.
I was just gonna ask, like, if you think like an author should do this type of things. I mean, should an author do marketing at all? Like in an ideal world, let's say.
well, I think two ways. Number one, if you don't market your book, you have no chance of getting readers, right? Unless
Mm.
you're friends with somebody that has a TV show and's going to bring you up there and say your book is the best. Uh, you're not. Visibility for an author is very, very is the steepest hill we have to climb to letting people become aware of us. Because I read a statistic 2 days ago. 450 books an hour of new books are uploaded to Amazon.
Wow.
So it's 11,000 a week. Okay, new books. I mean, that's insane, right?
Yeah.
So how is somebody going to find my book? Either a recommendation, a reading site like Hardcover. Some reader would say, "Hey, I just read this book. This is a great book. Why don't you guys take a shot at it? You like crime fiction or whatever it may be." So yeah, that's gold. That's not an advertisement. That's gold. It's a reader referral, a reader review. That's gold. But still, even if there's a reader review, let's just say on Amazon, I'll just stick with that for a second. Somebody read my book and puts a review up. Well, somebody has to see that review. Somebody has to get to my product page. How are they going to get to my product page? How are they going to find out about me? So, if it's your neighbor and your neighbor says to you, "Hey, this happens all the time. We in my household anyway." Somebody says, "Oh yeah, you should read this book. This is a great book." Friends of ours. "Oh, I just read these 3 books." Or my daughter will say, or my sister will say. That's word of mouth, and it's very strong. That's strong. But other than that, if you don't advertise, um, you're not you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. Um, and that's okay if you don't need to put food on the table. But if you need to pay your bills by writing, then you need eyeballs on your books, and you have to pay for that pleasure today. So now I don't know if the second part of your question today was whether or not an author should do it himself or herself, like create the ad. Well, there's self-service ads that, let's say, Amazon has and Facebook has, and even your competitor, let's say Goodreads have, which is a terrible system anyway. But you can create an ad yourself, um, and you should, because if you pay somebody to create that ad, then now you've added another layer of cost that is going to make it difficult for you to break even. Um, so, I mean, there's a lot of economics that I know about marketing, how much you have to pay per click, how many clicks it takes to convert to a sale. And that goes to the other lesson that I finally learned after being told to stop genre hopping was, and this is to any aspiring writers out there, not only stick with a genre, but then try to write a series. So I was never a series reader. I never really read series. So I hop around. I read just about anything. Um, but for to make it to for the economics behind writing a series are much stronger because of the cost that you have to market a book. So if you write a book, let's just say you have five books in a small series. If that reader likes that book, chances of them going to book 2 and book 3 and book are strong. So you can spend more money on marketing book 1, lose money on that book when you make your sale because it's almost impossible, and then make it up as they read through. If you only had 1 book, then you can't spend a lot of money marketing it, and you're not going to make money. You just won't. That's the fact. That's the fact of the business today. So
Yeah, I was just looking at what the most saved books were for July,
yeah,
and so these are books that haven't come out yet. So this is like, people are hearing about these books probably off platform, off of hardcover, but also on hardcover. And the number one book for like the past couple months has always been the next book in a series.
yeah.
Like it's almost like a statistic at this point where the top book on hardcover is probably going to be either the next book in a series or the next book by a popular author.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, that's a fantastic illustration of it, and it is true. And in the author community, like many of the newer authors will always say, "What do I, how do I sell? What's the best way to sell my book? Write the next book." That's the answer. I mean, you have to write the next book. So, yeah, that next book sells the other book, and then you have a backlist and all of that jazz. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Adam, with that, and your numbers are definitely right.
Yeah, for the marketing strategies and different advertising that you've done, what do you feel like right now is the most successful way of marketing your books?
The most successful way for me to market my books is when I do things like this, especially when I do. I live in Southwest Florida, so some of the things that I do down here is more localized, but they're large communities. So if you go into a large community, I'm invited in we have like an author night and tell them, either they read my book, so either it's a book club or just a major community, and it's that personal contact, and you sell books that way. That's one way of selling books. I alluded to, and I do spend a lot of money with Amazon advertising my books. I at this particular moment, I'm not spending. I just stopped all my Facebook ads. I just didn't find they were as effective. They're cheaper, but maybe it's that double click so that you're on Facebook. Somebody's on Facebook, as we may have said off camera. They're on Facebook to check maybe pictures of cats, and they were not there to buy a book. And then they, in their feed, they see a book ad that they go, oh, let me check this out. So they click on it, which costs you money, and it brings them to a site to buy the book, whether or not they decide to buy the book or not. Their conversions for that double click are not as favorable as those when somebody's on a site, i.e., maybe it be hardcover that is a reader. It's a book site. So they're there for that. So those conversions are a little bit easier. So, yeah, I wish there was a magic solution, but there isn't. It's just writing a good book, of course, is the key. You can't, even if you write, if you don't write a good book, if you don't write a great story and you don't present it properly, so you can have a great book, and there are many of them out there. The story is fantastic, but maybe they have a terrible cover, right? And today covers are very, very important. Very important, because when people are scrolling or they're looking for a book, there's a little thumbnail that shows a little cover, and it may be a great cover in its physical sense, but when you see a tiny little thumbnail of it, people don't know what it is, and they just pass. They don't even look at it. So you have to have it's actually more important to have a better cover and product page than it is to have the story, because they're not going to get to the story if they aren't captured by the image on the cover, and then the quote unquote the blurb about the book, right? I mean, I actually wrote my first blurb for a book in probably 15 years. I pay somebody to write my blurbs because I could write the book, but then trying to boil it down to that, 7 sentences is a challenge. That's ad copy. That's writing ad copy. It's not. It's a different kind of writing.
Oh yeah, I am not great at ad copy. That's one thing. When I see people that can do it well, I'm
Yeah.
always in awe of it. I'm like, wow, I would never have structured that in that way.
I know it's incredible. Sometimes I would I always worked with two guys, and I would tell them the story, and then they would come back with this thing. I'd go like, "How the hell did you get that, man? It's phenomenal. I want to read that story." So really, yeah, it's a talent. It's really ad writing, copywriting. I think is the name. And I read several books on it, trying to get better at it, but. I kind of, an author has a problem that we wrote the whole story. We want to tell you. Somebody says to you, like, what's your book about? And you go, you have 20 minutes, because as the author, I want to tell you everything, you know. And so if you're able to have that talent to do what they call an elevator pitch, right? Just like that, and here it is, right? Yeah, that's got my attention. That's something I've worked at, but I am definitely not good at, Um, the last one I took a stab at, like I said, I just wrote the first for the last book that I released. Actually, I wrote it, but I wrote it, rewrote it a million times, and then there are a couple of groups that I'm a member of that we put it in, and then we get the feedback and critique. I wanted to do this, try change this. That's not, and they help you to refine it to make it a better blurb. Um, so just what I did on my own, it's not, I even tried AI, frankly, to try to see maybe AI is the solution.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yeah.
That's good to hear. And speaking of, just to touch on like how you managed to make this theme that you can refer to for everything, for the covers, for
Yeah.
the blurbs. How did that happen? How did you manage to
Well,
put this? Yeah.
Yeah, how'd you
it's
find
just
them?
it's
Yeah.
it's like how did you develop your contacts, your own contacts, right? These are contacts
Yeah.
that you develop, that you've waded through at what maybe had bad experiences, right?
Mm.
You know, hiring, let's say, cover designers that kind of didn't express the genre, and not knowing it at the time, frankly, right? What do I
Mm.
know about, right? What do I know about designing a cover? I mean, not much. Yeah, it's a pretty cover. It looks great, but it has to send the right message to a reader about that
Mm.
genre. Otherwise, a beautiful cover, it's not going to click with them.
Mm.
So it was a matter of working with a couple, and also, of course, cost. Trying to find out that, trying to get a designer that works within my economic world, right? You can't spend 10,000 on a cover. It's just, you're not going to make that money back by selling, books for $6 a piece. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So it's those types of things. It's working with editors that are tough. I want a tough editor. I want a tough editor. I want an editor that I want to learn from, and I have learned. Is it disheartening at times? Yes. Is it fun getting kicked to the curb? No. um, uh, but the feedback that they give you, are they right? Of course, they're not going to be correct about everything. It's my story, but are there things that are being pointed out to you that are valid? That makes me better. I want to learn from that experience. So it's those types of things. Let's say with marketing, working with a bunch of different people that were marketing that continually disappointed me. And you move on, you move on, you move on. They go, well, oh, you know what? I work well with these people. Our goals are aligned. They're responsive. Those types of things. It's the same. It's how you build your own network, even personally, right? Personally
Yeah.
and business wise. So I feel like I had some really good people. You know, uh, I appreciate them. Hopefully, they appreciate me, and we have a good working relationship too. I'm also impatient, so I don't want to wait. If my baby's finished and I'm waiting for it to be edited or proofread, I don't want to be 90 days out. I can't. I'm too crazy. I want
You'd
I
start
want
forgetting things at that point too.
yeah, right. I want to move on to the next project, and I want to get that thing in the world. I want it released, and I want my readers to get access to it. So, and everybody that I've been, I use the word cobble together. the team, it's been working for me. It's been working for me, and it keeps it fun too. It keeps it fun. So, and many
Yeah.
of these relationships are, 10, 15 years old. So there's a familiarity, which is also dangerous, right? It could be a little dangerous, some familiarity. Um, but anyway,
You you mentioned like Amazon ads are one thing that's kind of working now, and Facebook ads you've kind of turned off. Are there any other things that like haven't worked and you've moved on from and learned from?
well, Goodreads ads that they don't work. I think it's terrible. Um, and BookBub, uh, BookBub is one of those email marketing services, and of course that it's all discounted. You have to discount your book. They have a featured deal of the day type of thing, um, which they move a lot of product, but it's not as effective as it used to be. And given the discounting, it's very difficult to break even with those. And there are a host of other email marketing services that I no longer really use. I used to use them, but it's difficult again because there's been a race to the bottom in terms of pricing is concerned, in my opinion, anyway. So now they want all of these services to move any product. They want you to sell it at 99 cents or give it away, and then at 99 cents, it's impossible to make back the money that you spent on the ad. It just basically is. Um, yeah, there's a big movement. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but there's a movement to try to get momentum, if you will. So doing discount your book to 99 cents, put out 5 or 6 different email marketing campaigns. And then hopefully your book will sell enough copies that it will click in the Amazon algorithm, and life is great. Except it usually doesn't work that way. But that's how it's being sold. Again, in my opinion, I know people won't be happy with me for saying that, but it just doesn't. It doesn't seem to work for me. I'd rather find a reader who's interested in reading my work and appreciates it, and is not looking for a discounted read. And again, it's not expensive. I'm not selling them like the traditionally published folks at $12.99 or $15.99. It's still $5.99 for a full size book. Is to me is a bargain. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since you have like a lot of experience with like this part of things and with marketing and ads, what would be like if you had a magic wand? What would be like something you really wanted from a book platform? Something you probably like imagined like or out of frustration you really want to exist. Is there something like that?
Well, I would say being able to be in touch with readers, right? Like
Mm.
have a direct conduit to the readers. And there's been some, there's a couple of attempts, but they never seem to really to work. And I don't know how to do it because I'm not a tech. The tech stuff I don't kind of get. But it would be wonderful to have. And I think that was what Goodreads tried to do a little bit with that. Like they had the like questions, ask questions of the author type of
Mm.
thing. But it just I don't know. That site just seems too busy when you open up the page. If you've been on it, it's just like where are my eyes going? Um, what's this all about? I think it's kind of messy, but I think because from my own personal experience, people like to try to talk about creativity and how'd you come up with that idea and with that carrot that reminds me of Uncle Bob and where'd you get that guy from? Those types of questions, either about the story or about the creative process in general, people are interested in. It's just like if I was to sit, with a sculptor, I'd be like, I've had like 50 questions, like, man, can you, and hopefully an author has the communication skills to engage a reader. I mean, that's where I think we might have a little bit I'm a musician as well. I play saxophone in a number of bands, and a lot of the not a lot, but many of the musicians don't have the great communication skills. Um, where hopefully an author has those communication skills, so if they're in touch with um, a yeah, I see that. If they have the communication skills, that a reader has a question, or just wants to chat about a book or the creative process, I think an author can address that. And I think that would be something I would welcome. Of course, it's all got to be managed too. We can't spend 5 hours a day interacting with readers, and but I every time a reader reaches out to me and I get emails every day, about stuff. I love it. I absolutely love it. You know, I'm happy that
Yeah,
they spend time with my book too. So
that's one of the things that I think, like a platform like Hardcover, we could definitely like facilitate that connection between authors and readers. Like right now, we're like our audience, like who we've been building for has been
mm,
the readers first.
yeah,
But I think once we move into authors and like create author accounts, I'm really curious to see how many other authors express the exact same thing that you just wanted. It's like, how do I feel connected with my audience? How do I get feedback from them? How do I share what I'm working on and get them excited about my next projects? Like, how do you generate a connection between you and your readers that's beyond just the page?
yeah. I think if they don't feel the same way I just expressed, I'd be stunned. I really would be stunned because we're looking for that connection with the reader. So I mean, you want to sit in a bookstore and sign books, all day long. That's not attractive. Um, but the thing that you said that at the outset about readers first, that is it, man. That is it. And I think Goodreads probably started off initially like that. And there was the other thing called the library thing, which might still be around these days. Library,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was these attempts, but it just seems that. And again, I know it's a business at the end of the day, and you have to find a way to monetize this. Otherwise, you can't feed your family. So I definitely get that. So there has to be some way, some medium way without, let's say Amazon has these other objectives. It's really kind of, to me, it's like a conflict of interest, at the Goodreads Amazon connection.
Oh.
Um, uh, now they show, well, it's been a couple of months now, they put the Goodreads ratings the, on the product pages on Amazon. Unfortunately, in the industry, Goodreads reviewers are usually the toughest. They're much tougher than Amazon reviews, much tougher. So if you have a book that, just for argument's sake, that's rates 4.5 on Amazon, you're lucky if it rates 4.0 on Goodreads. They're that much tougher. Fortunately, Goodread readers have been very generous to me, so I have no complaints. My reviews kind of line up. Um, but there's something that just doesn't feel right about the Goodreads thing, and they have, in my opinion, lost momentum over the last 18 months or so. Maybe it has to do with the takeover by Amazon. I don't really know. I don't spend uh, any time on Goodreads any longer. I don't spend any time, whereas I used to. Now I don't spend any time on Goodreads. So we need a viable alternative, that is reader focused, um, first. So I commend you, gentlemen, for you know running the flag up the pole.
uh, Thanks. Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and it feels like that's the kind of thing we want to build. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
And
Just get the word out to the author community, when you're ready for to put your product out there and readers. And I think
yeah,
it's exciting. It's interesting that we talk a lot about uh, the culture anyway, about lack of attention, short attention spans, and blah 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 blah. And we always seem to have this pendulum in our culture. And I think where people weren't reading, readers, it's going down, right? I mean, people aren't reading as much as they used to, or blah blah blah. All these negative statistics. People are playing video games all day long, and they're watching TV and all of that. But I think that we there is a certain movement, I think, back in the other direction. We can't just be glued to devices all day. I mean, we just can't, be scrolling your life away. You're just wasting your life. You're learning nothing. And it's a very poor, it may feel like it's good entertainment. It's terrible entertainment. Learning nothing in the process. You pick up a book, you're going to learn something, either about a
mm,
profession, a history, a period of time, all kinds of things, or somebody else's life experiences. So I think that we are, and I've seen, more, I would say the 30, I don't know how old you fellas are, but I've seen more people now, And this is somewhat anecdotal, but I do talk to a lot of people. I'm an author. I'm always interested in reading. There seems to be a little bit of a resurgence in the 30ish to 40 age group of people reading. And curiously enough, they're reading. Well, a lot of people still read on Kindles, electronic. I read on Kindle every day, but they're starting to go back to the hardcovers a little bit. About in terms of book sales, about a little bit more than half of my book sales, not like Kindle Unlimited, things like that, are paperbacks. So yeah, which is a little surprising. So I don't know if that's a genre. There's some genre expectation in that built into that as well, because certain genres are more, the readers are more like device readers versus, but there's still nothing like holding a book in your hand, man. There's really nothing like it. So
I just pulled up our. We just recently shared like how the average age of people on hardcover, and I'll share my screen for a sec to show you this graph, because I bet you'd be fascinated by it too. And it's like this
Wow.
whole age group between like 40 and like 20 or 18 is like the sweet spot, at least for our specific genres.
Yeah, you know what? That's very, very interesting, because kind of fits into what I said. And my information is only anecdotal, frankly. I don't think I have a lot of readers, for me anyway, that are in their 20s. But maybe the thriller stuff is starting to bring some of those guys in. I haven't looked at these statistics in a while, but it's heartening, frankly, to see this. People say that they love to see kids laughing, children laughing, right? And kids are playing, they're laughing. Of course, that's phenomenal. I'd rather see it. I get more excited when I see a young kid, 8-year-old with a book in his hand. I'm going, man, there's hope for this world, So yeah, that's an interesting stat. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah.
And we have a question from the audience here about your first reader. So after you've written a book, who's the first person that reads one of your books? Is it professional or family, friends?
Thank you, Maria, for the question. It's a very good question. And I'm like super protective of my work. So this is the story, how I do it. I write my book. I don't share anything. I'm not a part of any writing group that shares its work as you go along and looks for feedback. I don't do that. My wife is a voracious reader. She does not read the book until it's been edited, proofread, and ready to go to the market. So I will not let anyone see my stuff until I think it's the best it could be. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've let subpar work out in the beginning of my career, and I regret it, terribly regret it, because I was too anxious to get my product out there. So now even my wife does not read my books until it's been edited, been through several rounds of editing and 2 rounds of proofreading afterwards. That's just the way I do it. But thank you for the question. It's interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine that at that stage, if you're getting feedback, like in your head, you might be thinking, I know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
Give me time, it'll get there, but I know those are problems.
Right. And the other thing is that you have to be a little careful what they say, readers definitely know there's a problem. You can listen to readers when readers say that there's a problem with the plot. So if you have like 5 readers that say there's a problem with the plot, definitely listen to them, but don't listen to their suggestions about how to fix it. Okay. Don't, they say they're making you aware of a problem. You figure it out. Don't rely on them to figure it out. It's definitely a mistake. And the reason why I do it, I just because I've learned, if I'm paying an editor to professionally give his opinion, his 30 years of experience in analyzing a manuscript and making suggestions and telling you where there's a problem, why wouldn't I want to heed that advice? And why would I want somebody to why wouldn't I want to fix that before somebody else gets an impression of my work that is going to be like, oh man, they're going to be polite to you if it's a family member, right? Maybe, hopefully. But no, I'm very protective of my work. I want to get, and again, I'm not saying that when it gets out into the marketplace that there isn't an error here and there in grammar or spelling or whatever it is. Things just seem to always slip by. But definitely the storyline is completely buttoned up as to the best I think it could be, and based on the professionals. And then, the team of proofreaders I use these two proofreaders, and they've been with me for, you know, 20 books or so. And they also, they're editors, these people. So they'll bring things up sometimes that the editor, after it's been edited, will say to me. And so it's kind of like getting like a secondary edit, not so in depth, if you will, but we have a type of relationship that's so many years that they're going to say, hey Dan, this, you know, something's happening here, and I'm not. I took me out of the story, or there's an unresolved question here, and you may want to take a look at it. And sometimes I go, oh, you know what? I'll go back to my edit and we'll talk about it, and either we'll let it go or we'll clean it up in some way, try to put a band-aid on it if it's possible. So, thank you for that question, Maria.
Cool. Well, we're almost out of time, but
Yeah.
we have like 3 hot seat questions that we ask every
Uh-oh.
guest on Hardcover
Yeah,
Live.
hot seat question.
So,
There we go.
what book got you into reading?
Well, as a child, growing up, I used to read the Hardy brothers, and of course, I referred earlier to Agatha Christie. But the two books that made the most impression on me, okay, and they're completely disconnected, is the Count of Monte Cristo, which is probably my all-time favorite read, and then the other one is the Gulag Archipelago. So Solzhenitsyn, which was a Russian dissident writer who was in prison. And to get close to that's a read, man. So, but a great book and a short read is A Day in the Life of Ivan Desinovich. These are crazy books that people haven't heard, but that's a short read. It's kind of like Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. A Day in the Life of Ivan Desinovich is a very revealing read. The guy's in prison. You'll see Solzhenitsyn just brings it to life. It's those are the books that made massive impressions on me about how to tell a story. So another good
Yeah.
question, not an easy one. And it's another one that was Johnny Got Your Gun, which was about a soldier coming back from the Vietnam War. That was another like, oh my God, how could I tell a story like this guy did?
Yeah.
Cool.
I know you mentioned in one of your other interviews that if you'd have a guest over for dinner who's an author, it would be Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and
Yes.
that seemed like a very peculiar.
Yeah. It obviously is peculiar because he was just incredibly brave. I mean, he was just a brave man.
Yeah.
I mean, and it just so as forgetting the writing, it just to have that kind of brave, that kind of courage rather is just like would I do something like that? Probably not. I'd be running under my mom's skirt. I mean, I just that's not me. But I'm fascinated by these figures that were able to rise above, and then he also was able to communicate that experience. um, Again, he's not an easy writer. Again, The Day in the Life of Ivan Desinovich is an easy book to read. It's an easy book. Reading like The Circle that he wrote and things like that. These are like, you're slogging through them. But
Yeah.
he just his whole life experience was probably the reason why I said that. So.
Yeah, he'd be an interesting dinner guest for sure,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And what would you say, what book would you recommend most often to people?
Either yours or someone else, or maybe one by you and one by other people.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, that's it.
I'd recommend the one of mine and one of my pen name. No. Wow. All right. So I would probably recommend the Count of Monte Cristo. I mean, I just think it's a classic. It's one of the classics that I think still really hold up today, and it's not like a struggle to read. It's not in that the language, the vernacular is a little easier. And then for an introduction to my work, I would say Buried at the Lake. Buried at the Lake. It's a murder mystery. It's in my Lucas series. It's 15 books long, that series, plus two prequels, but you don't have to read them in order.
Mm.
And that book it sells very well. It really sells very well. It's probably, I mean, it's hard. I don't want to speak inside lingo, but it's a good book. It ranks well, and it sells well. So it's a good book.
I just added it to my want to read list on
Oh,
hardcover.
thank you.
Count of Monte Cristo
Yeah,
is on
well,
my
me too.
list, and I have it
Yeah.
on my shelf to read. So that
Oh
one's
yeah,
coming up.
yeah. That's
Here we go.
Dumas, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I'm asked this a lot of times, and people say, "What's your top 10 books?" And you go like,
Yeah.
it's hard to even think. I'm surprised I came up off the top of my head with those because I was like, you kind of freeze a minute. But I'd have to think about. And as I started talking about that Johnny Got Your Gun was another book, and nothing else is coming into my head right now. But you have to think about it a little bit about these books that impacted you, the great stories. And, one of the struggles that a big reader has, and my wife and I are like this because we both read. We say this constantly. Did we read this? Did we read this already? And because we read so many books, and that you kind of forget. The stories sometimes get kind of wound up in each other, and you go, no, that this happened to them. No, that was in a different book. Oh yeah, okay, And sometimes you'll open a book up, you go, oh, I read this already, So, yeah,
And
that's the problem with digital books. It doesn't happen with a physical book. That experience, to me anyway. So.
And last hot seat question. Let's say you have a day to read. You're not writing, or maybe you've already finished your writing for the day.
Right.
What does that day look like? What's the setting? Where are you reading? What's the physical space feel
Well,
like
the
for you?
physical generally, I mean, I live in Southwest Florida, so the weather is good, although it could be hot, but the heat doesn't bother me at all. I like the heat. In fact, I write generally on my lanai every day, and I'm out there. Even like a day like today, so if it's 90 degrees out, I'm on my lanai. And then when I read, I'm generally on my lanai. I go outside. I have a beautiful view. I live on a golf course, and I get my book, and that's where I camp out. Maybe I make an iced coffee and I'm camping out. I'm reading, and I also write, not in the same chair, but so it's either there. I'm talking to you from my office, and I'm at a desk, and this is a great writing space too. But I never read in here. Very, very rare that I read in here. Although I do have a couch that sometimes I do if the house is a little crazy. But generally, I'm reading outside or in my recliner in the house, and I'm usually writing either at the kitchen table, which sounds nuts too, or outside on lanai by myself. I could write when if I'm in a room and there's people talking and they're doing. I could still write. I'm able to focus. Even it doesn't bother me, that type of thing. I don't write in coffee shops, things of that nature. I think it's important to have the consistency in your space, that when I go to this particular chair at the table that I write at outside, it's kind of, that's what Dan writes,
Yeah, there's a term I've really liked for that is an irresistible staircase. It's the idea, like a staircase that's like right in the middle of a building that like makes you want to use it instead of taking the elevator.
Definitely.
I feel like same way for a desk, like that you feel comfortable at and cozy at, or a chair that you can read in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why they say, like, if you have trouble sleeping, don't watch TV in bed, don't do this, don't do that. I mean, I used to read every night before I went to sleep, and now the last 4 or 5 months, I haven't been doing that, and not sure. I just fall asleep too fast. That's the problem. So I usually read. I read every day, but I generally read either if I went to the beach or whatever, I would do that. But generally every day, I always make sure there's a couple of hours that after I've done my writing, if you will, and playing my horn, whatever it is we have to do, then I sit outside and I read, and I get my fix, if you will, get into somebody else's story and try to figure out how the heck did they do that, So
Well, this has been awesome, Dan. Where can people find you online?
The simplest place is at my website. So it's www.danpetrosini.com. Of course, if you buy on Amazon, you can plug my name in Amazon, or even if you don't spell it correctly, they'll find me, I think. So I have a number of books out there, or just put me in the internet. If you put my name in the internet somewhere in a search bar, you're going to come up with me generally.
And our librarian Jeff added all of your books to Hardcover, so your profile's on there with all of your books now too.
I'm so appreciative of that. That's fantastic. I really appreciate that, and I really mean it when I said at the outset that the journey that you folks have embarked upon is really needed. It is absolutely necessary, from not only from an author's perspective, but for the reading community, and for the culture at large. This is a really big positive, and kudos for you folks for doing this, man. I know it's not easy, but it's appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, and it's been really fun to build it and have feedback from people like yourself, and all the good to have all the authors on the platform. So yeah, hearing this is very, very helpful for us. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. I enjoyed it. It was nice. And when you're ready, I'll help you spread the word to the community as best I can. So because I know there's going to be interest. There's going to be interest. Any new channel, if you will, especially one focused on books, is really is just great. And we need to restore reading to become a daily practice for everyone walking this planet of ours.
Yeah, amen.
Well,
yeah,
it's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
So thanks a bunch, and
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining. See you on next one, and thanks again, Dan.
Yes. Cheers.